everyone, and welcome to episode 56 of the Plug In Play podcast. I am your host, Henry, and this is your checkpoint for video game news, reviews, and hot takes that nobody asked for. We've got a very news-filled show for you this week. It is a lot of news. Specifically, we have PC ports being pulled by Sony. They're trying to move away from their PC business. Project Helix, the next generation Xbox, announced by Microsoft. We're going to go through what they've said so far. A couple of other smaller stories. Fortnite increasing V-Bucks because it's just too darn expensive to run Fortnite anymore. Very direct statement from them. NetEase shutting down the new Yakuza creators game, and Highguard, We Hardly Knew Ye, finally shutting down as of a few days ago, actually. So we'll be talking about that briefly, as well as Resident Evil Requiem. I have finished the game, I have final impressions, and I will be giving them to you towards the end of the episode. So stick around, we've got a great show, but before we get into that, my favorite part of the episode, the housekeeping. That's right, we're trying to keep energy high for you to not click away from and for me to essentially advertise to you. So, while I have you, why don't you, if you feel like it, if you want, I'd appreciate it, give us a rating on Spotify, Apple, wherever you're at. Give us a 5-star. How many fingers do you have? Give us however many stars, however many fingers you have, an equivalent score. That's what I would prefer from you. On one hand, not both, unless the rating system on your preferred platform goes up to 10. Then do the higher one. Whatever the number is that's highest that you can reasonably do. But give us that. Go ahead and give us a follow on any platform you want. We're pretty much everywhere. We're on Twitter. We're on TikTok. We're on Instagram. We're on YouTube, all under the name Plug In Play Pod 1. You can leave us a comment there. You can be read off on the episode. We have actually a few comments. Few different clips went viral over the course of the past couple of weeks, so we'll be going over some of the comments we got there. And of course, you can send us an email in at pluginplaypodcast1@gmail.com. I will read it off on the show. You can be a part of it, and it's all in the description while you're down there. We also have timestamps. It's a labor of love. I do it for you. If you like something I have to say, you want to go directly to it. You don't like something I have to say, like maybe the housekeeping or something like that, you can skip right past it, and I do it for your convenience. And that is the housekeeping. How you doing? Welcome to the episode. We're finally into the actual goody good stuff, the video game stuff, while I'm continuing to ramble. But it has been a couple of weeks, obviously, since the last episode. I was pretty sick still during the last episode, which is unfortunate. Feeling much better now. Finally on the out of the flu and into the allergy season. So haven't been hit too hard by that yet. Still warming up down here, but it's inevitable. It's inevitable. So stay away from the pollen out there, everybody, and stay inside. Play some video games, as I will be doing. We were talking about the comment corner. Last episode, we didn't have any comments. It was a very sad day. It's become one of my more favorite segments on the show, is the comment corner. Fortunately, tried some different stuff out with clips. If you're normally somebody who sticks to the original couple of minutes of each episode, you'll know that social media has been a struggle for me. I am not built for this whole influencer life. It is just not something I'm clearly very good at. So been trying to do some different stuff with the clips, the shorts, to try and spread the word, the gospel of Plug and Play a little bit more, and took out me. I have a little cartoon avatar at the beginning of clips, and I was so sick last week. I was like, I'll just take it out, see what it is if I just do gameplay the whole time, and I did, and the clips did much better. So yeah, people just don't like my little cartoon avatar. Unfortunate, but also somewhat expected. Everything I've tried to do that I was like, this will set me apart. This will put a little personal touch on my clips. People will really appreciate it. It's like, no, No, they don't really. They only give a frick about just immediate retention. Are you visually stimulating enough? And no, my little cartoon avatar bobbing around a little bit is not good enough, and nor is my podcast presentation voice. Obviously, just take clips from the podcast and turn them into shorts, so nothing crazy. And the energy obviously drops. Right now, we're high energy. Once we get like hour one into this, I am already like, okay, we've gotten past the high energy. We're just into a conversational tone. But anyway, these clips did well. Got some comments. I'm gonna read them out for you so you can be part of the show. Couple clips actually got some comments here. These aren't good. So I had one Pokemon clip that I clipped out because of course if I have whatever, and guess what, the most successful clip I had was of course the Pokemon clip. It is a freaking cheat code to being an influencer. Just talk about Pokemon. That's all people care about in this world is Pokemon, and that is a constant on this podcast. Anytime I talk about Pokemon, it is always something that people want to pick up on. It's always something people click on. It's kind of crazy. I don't know why everybody just isn't a Pokemon influencer, to be quite honest. But I had a clip talking about the new announcement of Wind and Waves, the next generation Pokemon. And I basically said, like, yeah, it looks like another Pokemon game. Specifically, I said that I had a friend that was looking forward to it, and he got really hyped because there was a reflection in a puddle of a Pokemon. And he was like, this is amazing. And I'm like, look, I've been seeing reflections in puddles for literal decades in games. Like, I'm sorry that Pokemon hasn't been treating you guys right. And I will continue to stand by that until the day I die. Pretty much until every time I talk about Pokemon, this will always be the case. And I guarantee you it will be the same with Wind and Waves as well when it comes out. It's always going to be like, well, dang, this is a fun game. Like, I enjoy my time with it. For whatever reason, the charm, the magic is there from Pokemon. But gosh darn, it is so obvious that this game could have been so much better. Like, it's very obvious that these games are budgeted. There's not a lot of funding put into them. There's a lot of features that they could easily implement that they just aren't able to because of funding and lack of resources in general, and a quick turnaround time for a lot of these games as well. So, like, these Pokemon games are unfortunately just selling like hotcakes no matter what they put on the store shelves. And so it's very frustrating to me to see Pokemon fans be like, well, I don't give a frick. If this game looks like it's like, a decade old, I'll buy it day one anyways. It's like, well, I think you guys just deserve better. Like, that's all that I'm saying is, yeah, I like Pokemon too. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm, Pokemon's number one fan or anything like that, but I typically play the Pokemon games eventually, at least when they come out. So, like, I'm a casual consumer of Pokemon video games, and I have to say, like, you deserve better. Like, you deserve a functioning game at the very least, at the very minimum. I want your performance level to be good, if not great, for these games. So, more or less, kind of trash the game's reveal, essentially. And of course, people didn't take kindly to that. So, funny enough, it's normally YouTube Shorts I'm talking about. TikTok is actually where I got the comments this time. So, from Ink8060, she said, just yapping, LOL, to that. So thank you for your comment, Ink8060. And then this one I found a lot more. I just thought I'd throw her in there. But Prince34382, without an E, Prince without an E, he says, chess doesn't have reflections, but it will outlast your favorite game, BTW. This is fair. Chess doesn't have reflections. At least that is not part of it. Does not have ray tracing. Last I checked, any version of chess that I've played does not have ray tracing. I just found this comment to be pretty funny. Obviously, he's also like inadvertently trying to call out my favorite game, whatever it may be. Like your favorite game will not last the test of time, but Pokemon will. Like, that's essentially what he's saying. Obviously, comparing Pokemon to chess is comical in and of itself. But I will not do the internet influencer thing and just focus on the fact that he compared Pokemon to chess, and obviously Pokemon and chess are not an equivalent comparison. You can't do that. But I understand his point. His point is chess is timeless and graphics don't matter, performance doesn't matter. So it can stand the test of time just because it's a very good game. And that is essentially what he's saying about Pokemon, right? Is Pokemon is timeless. Pokemon is such a good game that performance doesn't matter, graphics don't matter, like new features and mechanics don't matter because it's just timeless. It's always going to be good no matter what. I mean, I think it should be very obvious where the conversation from there would be going. Is no, obviously you shouldn't just be like, well, Pokemon's so much fun that they don't need to ever improve it. If that's the case, then you should just continue to play Pokemon Red and Blue until the day you die, over and over and over and over again, because it's just a timeless game that nothing about it can be improved. No 2.0 version of chess exists, and therefore no 2.0 version of Pokemon should either. Obviously, these games come out once a year and they add new Pokemon all the freaking time, and new mechanics and new moves, because the game can be improved, the game can be enhanced. The game, obviously, if you are objectively looking at it, like, its technical performance has always been an issue. I mean, not always, but very modern Pokemon, the technical performance has certainly been a focal point for many people, being like, dang, these games aren't working the way they really should be. And it's just kind of weird to see people be like, oh yeah, well, I don't give a frick if this game is really good in every way. I just need it to be another Pokemon game. And it's like, I guess if that's really what you want, if that's all you need, I guess that's fantastic that that's it, all you need. You know, like, you're very easy to please. But when I look at any game, I say, here's a problem with it. Can we make it better? And when you're in a lot of situations, the answer is no, because video games are very expensive. But Pokemon is one of those things. It's literally the most profitable IP of all time. Like, it is the number one most profitable IP ever. They have money overflowing from the stacks. They are freaking Scrooge McDucking into golden vaults of money that Pokemon produces. They can make a really good Pokemon game, like, in every aspect. Very technically polished, very advanced. They can make huge strides with it if needed. They are just constantly accepting of the fact that there's a fan base out there that will buy it no matter what, and that, you know, like, it really doesn't need to be advanced that far in order for people to just buy the freaking game. And they have these annual release schedules they try to hit as well. So it's like, I don't know. Like, why are you defending that? I don't know. But the Pokemon fans are unhappy about it, so it is what it is, man. I will continue to talk about Pokemon probably every episode, because I guarantee you I'm probably going to make this a clip, and then it's going to get a lot of clicks, and it's going to have a lot of Pokemon fans talk about it, and then the feedback loop will ensue. I will continue to talk about Pokemon for the rest of my life, because that just seems to be all the video game community wants to talk about, is just Pokemon. I don't know why I'm overrun. Just what's the word I'm looking for? Inundated? Uninundated? I'm sorry. I don't read enough. It's a problem. But I am overflowing with people just talking about Pokemon all the time in my circles now, and I don't know where it came from. I know it's always been a big deal, but, like, dang, I just can't get away from it now. Anyway, enough Pokemon. Only 15 minutes in, and we still have one other comment corner I want to get to. So this one is a little bit different. So this person was actually agreeing with me in a sense. They weren't trying to attack me in some kind of weird viral way. But this was referring to a clip of Phil Spencer. So I had a couple of clips of Phil Spencer go up over the coming days, or the previous days, and They were, of course, talking about how Phil Spencer, really didn't do a whole lot to help out Xbox. He tried, but failed, and that's kind of why he lost his job. And, this guy more or less agreed and was saying, well, let's get into the comments, shall we? This is from Wendy's.cheesy.hotdog TikTok. He says, also, so he's adding on to my points. Also, no games for an entire generation is unforgivable. What games came out that were system sellers? So I thought about this and I scratched my head for a minute and I was like, dang, is he right? Like, what is. Oh my gosh, yeah, they really didn't have anything that made me want to buy an Xbox. They really didn't produce any games of worth. No wonder Xbox sucks. And then I had to go back and I had to actually look it up because my long-term memory is shot thanks to the internet and short-form content. And I was like, yo, no, they've made a lot of good games. So at least games that I know somebody liked or were considered very highly anticipated in some way, shape, or form. So some games that I pulled off of the list are Starfield, the new Bethesda game, Doom, Halo, Indiana Jones, Flight Simulator, Forza Horizon, Grounded 1 and 2, Hi-Fi Rush, which was one of my favorite games of the past few years. I mean, like, there are definitely, and these are not all the games either. So, like, there's like games like Psychonauts 2, which was also one of my favorite games of the past few years. But like that game did launch day and date with PlayStation as well because they had been bought by Microsoft. Double Fine was bought by Microsoft well into the development of that game, so they had already pretty much made the PlayStation 5 version of that game, so understandable. But so there were a few games kind of like that I didn't include, but those were just some highlights that I saw. Obviously, Doom, the Dark Ages was kind of all over the place. Halo, again, another one I think people would now very skeptically include as a system seller. Obviously, Halo Infinite did really well at launch, but people aren't very high on it now. Indiana Jones, I wouldn't say is necessarily a system seller, but it got a lot of awards last year. A lot of people really enjoyed it. Again, I think that maybe hindsight is 2020 now. People wouldn't be as high on Indiana Jones, but I enjoyed playing it. Flight Simulator, and this is where kind of the argument: Flight Simulator, Grounded, Forza. What are we kind of starting to notice with these games that I'm listing? Well, Flight Simulator, I think you're obviously going to point out very quickly and be like, oh, well, that's not a console game. That's a PC game. Duh. The only people who are going to play Flight Simulator are people on PC. Doi. Guess where all of these games came out day and date? They came out on PC. So a lot of people, I think, for a long time have been looking at Xbox and being like, well, why would I freaking buy an Xbox when I can just play all of their games on PC? Which Microsoft never had an issue with because they pretty much are the dominant PC operating system, so it really didn't matter to them. They also have a PC storefront that you can buy directly from on their OS, so they get a big chunk of that anyway. But another thing you may notice is Starfield, Doom, Indiana Jones, Hi-Fi Rush. Those all came out on PlayStation 2. Now, Mr. Wendy's cheesy hot dog here, he may not have liked any of these games and may not have considered any of these games to be system sellers, which is fair, right? I don't think I would buy a console for Indiana Jones. I don't think I would buy a console for Hi-Fi Rush. Even though I loved Hi-Fi Rush, it would not be enough to make me drop, whatever, $300 to $500 on a console to play it, right? It's a short, small game that I don't see, unless there's several games really on a platform that I want, I wouldn't go out and buy a whole console. So all of these games aren't maybe system sellers to him, but they're probably system sellers to some people. But here's the problem is that Xbox has been pivoting to a strategy where they didn't have to make you buy an Xbox. You were going to Game Pass or you were going to PC or something else other than their console. That's been their whole thing. So when he said, oh, well, where are their system sellers? They've never had one this generation by definition, because you at no point have to buy an Xbox anymore to play any of their games. In fact, I think most people would have told you, don't buy an Xbox, invest in a PC or buy a PS5, because at least a PlayStation 5 has other first party games that you can't get anywhere else, and a PC will just give you the best performance and give you the access to the most amount of games. So like I think it's an interesting thought experiment. I think it's an interesting thought experiment, right? Did Xbox have system sellers? I mean, technically no, they didn't, but at the same time, that question and the way that's phrased also implies that Xbox has not been producing any games. And as the biggest video game publisher in the world, that just simply doesn't compute. That they own some of the biggest and most successful studios in the world, but they aren't producing any system sellers, and that's just because their business model has moved completely away from being a system seller. Like, the Xbox is no longer an emphasis for them, and we'll get into that as we go into the rest of the podcast. There's, obviously the Helix we'll be recording, or we'll be talking about in the coming minutes. So that would be kind of my final thoughts on that. Is yes, but also kind of no. So thank you for the comment, Mr. Wendy's Cheesy Hot Dog. I do appreciate it. And it was an interesting thought experiment because I had to literally think about it. I was like, what has Xbox put out in the past generation? Oh my gosh, I don't think they've produced anything of worth. And it's like, no, they have. It's just there's no reason to buy the console, so that's why you're not considering any of those games system sellers, which is just different than how we normally look at it. But anyway, I appreciate all comments. I appreciate all attention. I am an attention whore. So thank you very much for your participation in the Plug and Play podcast. And if you want to be participating in the Plug and Play podcast, please leave a comment and I will get back to you. Promise. So, on to the news. My second favorite portion of the episode outside of the comment corner, because my viewers are the most important part of this whole operation. Love it. The news has been jam-packed with maybe not as big a stories as the last episode. So Bluepoint shutting down, Phil Spencer stepping down, getting a new Xbox president. That's a big deal. It's a really big deal. That's going to be easily in contention for one of the biggest stories of the year, no doubt. This episode, however, we have a lot of smaller stories that I still think are really worth talking about. It's very interesting because the past few episodes, I have had a lot of news stories that I've kind of delved into. There's always been one or two big news stories each week that I'm like, oh, well, this is a really big deal. I really got to talk about this. This, I feel like I've even included some stuff. It's been a while since I've included smaller stories that I want to talk about, but I don't think a general audience is typically going to care about. But in this case, I have a few of those. But we're not going to start with that. We're going to start with putting a ribbon on it, tying a neat bow on the story of Highguard. Highguard has officially shut down 3 months after being announced and 6 weeks after launching. So this is the story heard around the world. Everybody's been watching this game flounder and flop and die a slow and painful death ever since its announcement. I have been very vocal about saying this game doesn't look that bad. You people are crazy. Played it and I was like, yeah, it's okay. And I think that was the general consensus amongst most people, is it is not a travesty of a game. It is just fine. And probably could have benefited from some playtesting, some betas, but they felt there was such strong backlash that they shouldn't even say anything. They should just let the game speak for itself. This is a game that had talented developers behind it, storied developers from major development studios that had worked on very big first-person shooter and multiplayer games before. It seemed like it had potential to do something interesting. I will not go into detail on what it did that was interesting and why it could have succeeded but just didn't, because I've been on to that, been talking about that in other podcast episodes, so I invite you to listen to those as well. However, I will say this game attracted millions of players. Over 2 million players, according to their final statement that they made before pulling the plug on March 12th. So Friday, for those last Friday that for those of you listening on a Tuesday, the day these episodes drop. And this also comes after mass layoffs from the studio. This was something that people had kind of been suspecting. There was also at some point like the website went down or something like that. I think that was just kind of a red herring, but not a direct indicator of any sort. Who knows why the website went down, but it was likely because they were scrambling to try and do anything behind the scenes. But this is revealed to have been the case. The layoffs, that is. The layoffs happened because Tencent was revealed as to be the major investor in this particular game. A game like this requires millions and millions and millions of dollars to create. This was a very high-polished, very technical game that I'm sure had a lot of people working on it, and that requires a lot of money to get off of the ground. And so it required a really big backer. And I think we all knew some major publisher was behind it and lost everything. And that's what Tencent was. Tencent was the big benefactor behind this game. Tencent, obviously the major Chinese publisher that is trying to take over big swaths of the gaming industry as of the past few years. Obviously, nobody cares that these people lost their money because they're China. So anyways, they pulled out and they said, oh, well, we don't have the funding anymore to sustain the staff that we have. And so that's why there were mass layoffs. This year, or there was a year's worth of content ready to go for this game. It had already been planned. And there was a final patch dropped for the game about a week before the game finally went offline, which added a new warden, which is essentially a new hero, a new playable character, a new weapon, account level progression, and skill trees. So this was all stuff that had been finished, and they had essentially just been waiting to have a big patch, or I'm assuming over the course of time would have slowly patched in all of this content, and it was not to be, unfortunately. They also had a desperate drop of content very early on, probably a week after the game came out, trying to get people to come into the game. This game, unfortunately, at no point did it seem like this game did what it needed to do to keep players around. It's really unfortunate because I would be sitting here being like, oh, like, you guys are ridiculous. I cannot believe that you guys let this game die. I can't believe you let this game die. It didn't deserve to die, and you are responsible for its death, because no one played it. But that is not what happened. That's not what happened at all. And that's what's so sad is, or that I think it's less sad. It honestly makes me feel a little bit better, because it makes me say, well, this game probably just wasn't very good in the first place, because over 2 million players, millions of players, gave Highguard a chance. I'm one of those. But of course, I'm not a multiplayer gamer. I was never going to stick with this game at any point, unless like friends picked it up and wanted to play with me. Like, that would be the only reason I would be going back to this game and touching it at all. But if 2 million players, a lot of which I'm assuming were interested in giving it a chance and seeing what it was like, played it and said, no, this game sucks, or this game isn't good enough for me to stick around with. I have Fortnite. I have X, Y, and Z live service game that I'm already kind of content with, and I don't need to add another one to the roster. If those guys can't be convinced, then you just have a game that isn't good. That isn't good enough. It wasn't good enough for prime time yet. You needed to do some things to tweak it. You needed to do some things to try and encourage people. And look, I'm reasonable. I'm realistic. The negative backlash that this game had was already a death sentence. It was enough for people to probably either be scared away or to know that this game did not have a future. And there's games like Marathon that already are coming out, and people are like, yeah, this game isn't maybe the best, but I see the future for it. I know that Bungie will be doing something good with this in the future, and I'm willing to stick with it. There's enough here that I'm willing to stick with it. I never saw the turnaround on that. I saw people backlashing from the backlash. I saw people like me who were saying, like, I can't believe Highguard is getting this much backlash for doing literally nothing outside of being announced last at the Game Awards. Like, I can't believe that. And when that is, like, really the only thing people are saying is, like, well, they don't deserve that much hate because they didn't do anything wrong. Not, this game is good. If that was the conversation we were having, this would be a totally different thing. If the conversation was, well, we should really be giving Highguard a chance because there's some really innovative stuff in here. There's some stuff we really like, X, Y, and Z. It deserves to stick around. You deserve to give it a chance. I think you, at that point, can say, fine, it shouldn't have died. That's unfortunate. But when people go and they check it out and they say, no, I'm bouncing. I don't really want to stick around with this game. What that tells me is the game was never good. And it probably deserved to die. And it probably didn't, quote unquote, deserve to die, but it was always going to have a really tough time, is I think what the answer to that question is. It is truly an indicator that I think live service games are just really difficult to break into. I think we've clearly reached a saturation point with live service games. You have to be doing something really good out the gate for people to stick around. You have to be doing something innovative, something really good that makes people stick. I think Bungie has a reputation for making good live service games. They have good shooting in their games, and I've heard that they have some interesting mechanics layered into Marathon that I'm not particularly interested in. I was never going to really touch Marathon outside of the open beta, but I've heard you probably need to really invest into Marathon in order to get hooked. And I mean, I'm not going to do that. Absolutely not. But like, at least there's people out there who are saying this game has potential. There are elements here that could be tweaked and, elaborated on, and we could make a really great game. I never heard anybody really say that with Highguard. I always heard people say, it's fine, I don't think people are going to stick around to find out if it's ever going to get any better, but it's fine. And like, I'm sorry. If people already think your game is dead, if people already think there's no reason for me to get invested in this and drop microtransactions on it because the game servers are going to get pulled in 3 weeks. Yeah. I'm sorry. Like, the game was always going to die. And I think it just is a really big problem for live service games moving forward. And it's going to continue to be. It's going to continue to be, and, eventually we'll live in the Fortnite metaverse or the Roblox metaverse, and that'll be, the 2 games that exist in the entire market, and we'll be good. But, like, at this point, people are still trying to break in. People are still trying to find different things that they can do within the market, and it just is clearly something you have to get really lucky with, or you have to be doing something really unique and interesting. And that is very hard. It's very hard. It requires a lot of capital and a lot of investment. And I don't know how many people are going to be able to get that now based on, we see Concord die a horrible death. We see Highguard die a horrible death. And you're really going to have some bullish investors that are like, oh, yeah, we have something great. And by the way, Highguard and Concord had really good pedigrees and a lot of funding. Like, I don't think people like to go back and talk about that very much. But yeah, Concord had really good developers behind it from really talented studios. It wasn't just like, oh, Sony picked up a game and thought they could make it. Like, no, it was a really talented development team from Storied Studios. So we'll continue to watch the live service games industry flounder, except for the 10 games that will never die. But that's Highguard, and that's an official wrap on Highguard. You'll never hear me talk about it again, except for to talk about live service games that failed miserably. But I don't foresee any further stuff coming out on this. There will probably be some piece, Jason Schreier will probably do some piece on Bloomberg about how this game failed, what happened behind closed doors, how it got to this point, kind of deal. But I don't know if I'll do a retelling of that on here because it's really just, it's just hindsight kind of stuff. It's not really news. It's like, well, we all know what happened. It's the game shut down and nobody liked it. And it's like, oh, yeah, that was what was going to happen at the end of the story. Yeah, just to let you know, like, that's not new. That's not, you can't spell news without new. That's like the whole thing, right? So that's not new. So I probably won't ever talk about it again. That is just Highguard, and I don't know. I rest in peace. I don't know. I don't even know how to really feel about Highguard. I don't think I have strong feelings about it. I don't think anybody does. And that's, clearly a problem. Clearly a problem. So, moving on. Next, a big story here. A lot of people freaking out about this because it's the hardcore gaming community, people. So we gotta talk about Sony pulling out of porting its games to PC. Say it ain't so, Sony. How are us PC people going to play your games anymore? Oh, unfortunate. So, the details behind this. Upcoming games like Soros and Ghost of Yotei, both of which, the prequels for those games, so Ghost of Tsushima and Returnal, came to PC, will not be coming to PC anymore. They may have been scheduled for a port at some point, but they have been shut down, as it were. Multiplayer games, however, so Sony obviously known for producing live service games and multiplayer games, such as the upcoming Marvel Tokon and Marathon, are going to be coming to PC. So any multiplayer game that kind of requires an online community that you can get a lot of microtransactions out of, those will continue to be ported. Death Stranding 2 and Kena, so second-party games or third-party exclusives, whatever you want to call it, they will also be coming to PC. So it's really just first-party Sony games that you're going to be missing out on. So this was a big deal. No bueno. Nobody wants to miss out on games, right? I think, Sony moving their stuff onto PC was just a net positive for the gaming community, right? Is it a net positive for Sony? I don't know. Let me get into some more small details on this before I give my opinion, because my opinion is the right one. Just kidding. I really don't know where to stand on this fully, but I have ideas, and I think a lot of people are throwing around ideas. So, according to the research firm Newzoo, this is from GameIndustry.biz, so they started looking at all of the titles and how they kind of shared a crossover between PC and console. So essentially not crossover, but how many people, what percentage of players are playing games on PC versus the console? So in this case, for instance, Horizon Zero Dawn, 22% of players for Horizon Zero Dawn, 22% of them were PC players. So that means 78% of them were on the console. So that's, a pretty decent chunk considering this game comes out probably, I can't remember the difference between Horizon Zero Dawn and the PC and the console version, but I'm several years in between that. So a lot of people played that, considering most people who probably wanted to play it already had on console, if you really, really wanted to. God of War, also 14%. Spider-Man, the first Spider-Man, Insomniac Spider-Man game, 14%. So if we're going back and looking at units sold, 4 million players for Horizon Zero Dawn, 3.5 million for God of War, 3.8 for Spider-Man. So this is all decent revenue, right? I mean, that's what I would say. As we continue to go on, they say the more recent ones, so something like Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart at 8%, so much lower than even the lowest percentage of those original ports. Horizon Forbidden West, the sequel to Zero Dawn, which you would think would have an uptick comparative to the original, 7%. God of War Ragnarok, again, very critically acclaimed game, very well regarded in all regards, a 6% console to PC split. Marvel's Spider-Man 2, 5% of players played on PC. This is obviously a continuous decline, if you can not tell. So they say, hey, the reason we're kind of looking at here is we think that it's just staggered releases that's really killing these numbers. If you release them day and date, it'll be okay. Don't worry about it anymore. It'll be fine. And I don't know. I think I look at that and I say I see different things, right? I see a diminishing return over time because I think it looks like it was a novelty factor for PC players to play the game. I'll say it's a novelty factor for me to play like a Xbox game on a PlayStation. I never thought I'd be able to. The fact that I even could is like a crazy thing. I have a copy of Gears of War Reloaded, the remake of Gears of War 1, on my desk right now for PlayStation 5. Not because I'm like, yo, I really want to play that on PlayStation. I have it on Game Pass. But like, I genuinely think it was super cheap. It was like under $20 or something. I was like, yeah, sure, why not? I'll just have it for the novelty of having a Gears of War game with a PlayStation logo on my freaking desk. Like, that's kind of insane to me, right? So I think there's a novelty factor for it for sure. A game that they did not include here is Days Gone, which you may freaking not remember. It's the motorcycle biker gang with zombies in it, made by Ben Studio, which is a Sony first-party game, and it sold incredibly well. It is the number one best-selling Sony PlayStation PC game on Steam. Number one. More than God of War, more than Horizon, more than Ghost of Tsushima, more than Spider-Man. Days Gone, the game that everybody freaking makes fun of and thinks is like kind of lame. And you know why? It was the very first PlayStation PC port. So when I hear that, I hear, oh, it seems almost like the numbers just continuously go down as the novelty factor wears off. That's what it looks like to me, right? So, another element of this story. NetEase. Sony bought NetEase as a studio that was exclusively going to be helping with porting games from the console to the PC. A lot of people were very scared for NetEase when this announcement came, and I admit I would be too if I was NetEase. I mean, they just shut down Bluepoint, and now you're telling me you're going to be stopping doing what we want, what like we're bought to do. That's like all we do is just port stuff to PC, and you don't want to do that anymore? Hold on now. Sony is still porting games. It's just the multiplayer ones. So NetEase would probably not be needed as much, but NetEase can also still be used as a support studio. So in general, I don't think NetEase is in danger of being shut down. Also, this was something that was emphasized was Sony could certainly be choosing to go back to being a multiplat at any time. Okay? So they may look at this and they may say, right now, this is a problem. I don't know if we want to do this anymore. And then they could be like, no, I think we're actually good. We'll bring them back. So I'm not super scared for Nixes. Okay. Overall, this is great news if you're a PlayStation fanboy. Holy frick. This is great news. You finally have you have your reason again for owning a console. Thank goodness. Your loyalty has paid off. If you're a PC player, really unfortunate, less games for you to play. But it is what it is. I think you're eating pretty well on PC at the moment, regardless. So I'm not too cry-y for you, but I am a little saddened by my PlayStation brethren out there. I think we shouldn't be championing exclusivity. I get it. It is good because it gives you value for the console that you bought, and I understand that from a monetary perspective. You don't want your game, your console that you spent hundreds of dollars on, to be worth less, especially if you can only afford like one. If you have a budget of, well, I have one console in my house, I can only have one. I had to choose, and I chose Sony. This makes my console more valuable. It makes me feel like I made the right choice. And I get that because I've freaking been there. So I totally understand it. Why did Sony do this? So I gave you the data and I said, look, probably novelty factor. These games were getting worse and worse in terms of selling. I think that's the emphasis here. Why were these games selling worse? Well, according to this firm, they think it's because of staggering releases. I think it's because of novelty of buying a game on PC from PlayStation more off. The ultimate bullet point here is these games weren't selling very well. They were paying to port these games, and they were selling a couple million copies, and it was getting worse and worse and worse, and these were Sony's flagship series. Nobody was buying their biggest games. I would be looking at this and I would be saying, why are we doing this? What are we really getting? And I think any normal person would say, well, you weren't getting any sales at all on just keeping them exclusive to your PlayStation brand. Like, if you were only having them on PlayStation, that's 2 million sales of, whatever it was, Spider-Man 2, or whatever the case is, that you didn't get. And it's just, so that's just free money, right? It probably isn't super expensive to port these games, so might as well just take the money. You're leaving money on the table. That's what I always hear, is you're leaving money on the table. What I am seeing is Sony has a console business. The console business primarily makes money through extra party transactions. So if you buy V-Bucks from Fortnite on your PlayStation, they get a cut of that transaction. If you buy Call of Duty on PlayStation, they get a cut of that transaction. If anything you buy while you are on your PlayStation, they will get 30% of it. And that's where the real money in the console business is. That's why you're in the console business. It's not to make money off of your first party games that you're putting on your console or on PC or something like that. That's not really where the money is. The money is in all these other transactions, right? So, great stuff in that regard. Problem here is, if you're now putting these games on PC, you are diminishing the value of your console brand, right? And I think you start looking around and you see Xbox doing this, and it's absolutely obliterating their console business, and it's not benefiting them at all. I think that's where you really start to see the reasoning behind this decision. Is you kind of have to take all of these bullet points and line them up and then say, oh, that's why Sony's doing this. I don't think you can say it's a one thing, like, oh, well, their sales weren't as good. I mean, yeah, but like, that's free money, right? So why not? It's like, oh, well, X, Y, and Z kind of deal. Like, it's really all of these things together. I think these games were diminishing in sales. I think that it was hurting. They were looking around and looking at the industry and where it was going, and they're saying, hey, Xbox has really imploded doing this. Maybe we shouldn't do that. And maybe we should really try to hone in on what our strength is, and that's really giving players a reason to pick up a PlayStation console. And exclusives are the only reason you really would do that. That's the only reason you would pick up any console, is their exclusives. If you have access to exclusive games. So you put all these things together, and what do you got? You got, let's stop doing PC for now. And I think that is the bullet point. That is another emphasis. We're putting that in bold for now. Will Sony be done with this? I don't know. I think it's very possible they come back to PC at some point. I think PC still seems like it is the inevitable end point for video games. Everything will just be a PC. And that's what will eventually bring Sony back. Okay, well, we have to start putting things on PC because that's where everybody is. Consoles are dead. There's no reason to own a console anymore. So we have to start moving into PC territory. Port all this stuff to PC. So it's an interesting move, I think, is the end point there. It's an interesting move. I think everybody would have thought the opposite. That Sony moving into PC just seemed like the way the industry was moving, and that surely there was no downside to having their games on PC, especially if there was a staggered release, because you still have that exclusivity factor for like a year or whatever, 6 months for whatever they wanted to do for a PlayStation console. So if you still do have an incentive there. So like it just seemed obvious, right? And I think that if Sony is pulling back from what seems to be obvious, there has to be a good reason. Like, it's clearly not as good as what we would assume overall. So it's just a really interesting story because of that, because this seemed so obvious. It's so weird to see it happen, right? So that's really all I have to say about that. I probably rambled on that a little too long, but you know, whatever. We're only an hour into the episode, right? not a big deal. Next up, the other big bomb drop of the week. Xbox confirms Project Helix, the next gen Xbox that will play Xbox and PC games. So they had a talk on this at GDC as well. Not much was really talked about, okay? I'm going to be real. I watched the GDC conference. I read the statement by the new Xbox CEO. There was really not a lot said that was crazy about the Xbox Helix. But we did have some things to pull from. The main emphasis here is that they're clearly focusing on power. Didn't get enough info to really delve into that, nor am I educated enough to, so it is what it is. But I think the main emphasis that they kind of were pushing is, hey, we're going cross-platform. Your PC library is going to be here. You can play your Xbox games. You can play your PC games. A big thing they mentioned is we're going to start adding an Xbox mode to like Windows, like our operating system that we own. That's kind of what we're going to be doing, is really trying to make it a hybrid, almost like a Helix, kind of spinning it together for console and PC. So, if we want to put that in layman's terms, if we want to really get to the heart of the matter, this is an off-ramp. This is a way for you and the Xbox brand to exit Xbox. What I am seeing, from what I'm gathering, from what I'm hearing, from what I'm piecing together, is Xbox will soon be integrated into the operating system of Windows. It will no longer be a gaming platform. It will be it will just be Windows. Like Xbox as we know it will just be essentially the area you go to access maybe specs for games or for a storefront for games or whatever the case is. Windows will really be the case. This, like, the hardware business will essentially them just be packaging a PC up for you, and you can play PC games on it, and obviously Xbox games too. This is, I'm not going to say it's confusing because I really had to think about it, because to me it just seems like, well, you're killing Xbox. Like, you're really killing Xbox. What is the point of a console now that you are putting Steam on? Because now, why would anybody buy an Xbox game? They're just going to buy it off of Steam. Like, that just seems like the obvious thing you would do. Is, why would I invest in this dying brand when I can just invest in a platform that I know will be around for a while, like Steam? That doesn't make any sense. And when you kind of push it as more like, well, we think this is just dead anyway. Xbox is like, there's just nothing we can do to bring this back from the dead. We clearly just F this up so bad. We lost the generation that we needed to really stay in the game for this. We have to abandon ship. And when you look at it like that, yeah, just turn it into Windows. Because as Microsoft, what is their bread and butter? It's Windows. They have a ironclad grip on the PC operating system space, right? Like, they are the guys. They're Windows. They are Windows, which is the operating system that 99% or all of PCs use. Any PC I've ever seen, obviously there's Linux and all that other stuff, but like, I mean, who do you really know that has a Linux operating system that's not like a total freaking nerd? How many businesses do you know your work laptop is running on a Linux operating system? It's rare. It's minor. 98% of it, the PC space, the operating system is Windows. Okay? So why wouldn't you just kind of fold it in? If you're already saying, well, Xbox is dead, we're going to fold it into PC at some point, guess what? We freaking own PCs. We have the operating system that they all run on them. That's where this is going. And that's where this entire Project Helix, everything I've been gathering, everything that it seems to be the case of, it seems like this push for Xbox plus Windows, that's what's happening. It's just really weird because you're still seeing them like, well, we're still going to have a huge publishing branch. We're still going to be making a lot of video games. And it's like, well, you really don't need that anymore unless it's just making a lot of money for you. But like, there's not really a huge reason to have that anymore if you're just going to be a platform. And if that's even the case, I would think even the Xbox arm of that would eventually die because you're going to just, like, Steam would just overtake you. Like, I don't see them being able to compete with Steam either. So what is really going on here is, why aren't you just absolutely destroying this? Just burn it. Just absolutely burn it. Like this, and it's obviously an off-ramp because you don't want to lose all the goodwill that you have with all these people. But like, I just don't see an easy way to do that. There's no easy way to do that. No elegant way of doing that. Eventually, you're going to have to pull the plug. I think that's what I'm trying to get to. That's where my brain was slowly teetering to, is eventually you have to pull the plug on this. Eventually, why do you need these publishing studios anymore? You don't. Pull the plug. Eventually, where are people's libraries going to go? Well, why would you need to support them anymore? This isn't your business anymore. Pull the plug. Like, it just doesn't seem like a very elegant way there's no elegant way to do this. But I mean, that's what something like a Dreamcast did, But like, they've offered people ways to play their games throughout generations and all that. It's I don't know. It just seems like such a mess. And I think, last episode we talked about, okay, the previous co-founder of Xbox said, this girl was being brought in, the new CEO of Xbox was being brought in as palliative care. She's going to be the one who's going to slowly kill off Xbox. And I mean, based on, we're basically merging Windows operating system and Xbox, and we're going to be making this new console essentially a hybrid PC. It's a PC. And you're going to be able to play all of your PC games on it. Okay, so yeah. I mean, like, I just don't see why I wouldn't just invest in a PC after this. Why they're not just going to tie all of my games into this, and then it's just going to be, that's it. Well, now we have a way for you to off ramp to the PC. All your stuff is going to basically be tied into an operating system that is tied into the PC, and now, good luck. You have everything you need, and we're gone. We will fly off into the night. That's what it really seems like. And, we're still kind of figuring this out. We don't have a definitive idea yet because they haven't really told us a whole lot. Like, this is me really reading between the lines. But that's what I'm getting. And it's a sad thing because I don't want there to be less competition. They're still saying they're going to make more handhelds. There's going to be a big thing that I found interesting that they mentioned was cross-platform resume. So essentially, like, you can, pause a game on your Xbox and then open it on your PC, and then you can start playing it from right where you were. Like, that's cool. I like that. There's already kind of functionality like that on, like, Steam Deck, from Steam to, that's like more so save files though. So quick resume is a little bit different, but like, that's interesting technology I'd love to see more of, but I don't know. It's just, I feel like I'm rambling here. I feel like I'm kind of speaking in circles, and a lot of it is because there's no definitive answer to this, right? And it's really hypothesizing. Oh my gosh. It's really going into the hypotheticals. It's really theorizing. I combined hypotheticals and theorizing into some nonsense word. I apologize. But it's really theorizing about the potential of this move and what would it eventually do and why. And I think if I was an Xbox person, I'd be saying, gosh darn. I'm not going to say livid, but I'd be like, dang, I made the wrong choice. I backed the wrong horse, and I would be sullen, I guess, is the best word if you've heard that one in a while. But that's what we have right now. We'll be keeping an eye on it in the future, but that really does seem to me like what's happening right now. So just kind of a sad state of affairs, I suppose. But that's been Xbox for the past however many frickin' years. Not many good stories coming out of Microsoft on that. Next, we're getting into some smaller stories, but smaller stories that I think really do deserve a spotlight. So this one is Gang of the Dragon. Gang of the Dragon, the game from the creator of Yakuza, Nagaoshi Studios, is likely canceled, and the studio is currently floundering after NetEase pulls funding for the game. The studio, Nagaoshi Studio, from the creator of Yakuza, is facing closure after a funding pull. He's currently in scrambles to find a new investor. NetEase, best known for Marvel Rivals and the Chinese arm of Blizzard, for video games specifically, pulled out after learning the project still needed another $44 million to reach completion. NetEase has been attempting to pull out of international video game development as of late. The game was announced 3 months ago at the Game Awards. This is a very sad thing because obviously everybody I think was looking forward to this, or not everybody, but Yakuza specifically has been blowing up in the past few years. A lot of people have really been getting onto it. I have played several Yakuza games and spin-offs, and I will continuously say your favorite Yakuza game is your first. They never get any better. Because they are the same freaking game every single time. There's very few differences, a lot of overlap between one Yakuza game to the next. They all feel very dated to me, so that's a personal opinion. Again, I played like 5 of them, and I still say that. So probably played 4. I think I played 4 of them. So I would assume Gang of Dragon would have been another Yakuza game. I would have assumed it would not be too different, and I am not too disappointed that I'm going to be missing out on whatever Gang of the Dragon eventually culminated into being. I assume it was another Yakuza game. So again, I'm not too hurt over this, but it seems like there was some clear miscommunication or some clear budgetary concerns with NetEase here. A lot of people are acting like, yo, NetEase is the devil. They freaking killed this game. One, we don't technically know it's dead. It's probably dead. It sounds like whoever is going to pick this up would have to pony up at least $44 million in order to complete the game. Who knows how much longer in development it has. It's apparently deep into development, which is even more effed up. But like 44 million when you're deep into development, that is probably not a great number to hear. I would probably understand that. So, NetEase pulling out, I mean, they clearly didn't think the game was good enough. They clearly didn't want to put $44 million more on the table for it. And whatever the case is, they clearly are trying to loosen their international development efforts. So NetEase is one of the bigger Chinese publishers. And I did not realize how big they were. I obviously know them from Marvel Rivals. I've heard and seen of Fragpunk before. They have a Tom and Jerry mobile multiplayer game that I love to point out exists whenever I talk about NetEase. I didn't realize how much they had been culling studios. So I read this article on GDC, or excuse me, VGC. GDC is the Game Developer Conference. VGC is Video Game Chronicle News. So VGC reported on this, and they kind of went through a lot of the studios that they had been getting rid of in an effort to kind of give information on, like, well, yeah, this was just another in a long line of NetEase's decisions to destroy things that they've picked up recently. A lot of these studios they haven't even had for 5 years, so not very long-term investments. Clearly they have seen some things they do not like in the game industry. They don't think that a lot of these games are very good returns on their money, and they're trying to get out. And they're trying to get into more succinct and big wins. I think they've kind of tried to say they want to be kind of more like a Hoyoverse, so they want more Genshin Impacts. They want more live service, is what I would assume, that are bringing in the big bucks. And the fact that like Marvel Rivals is one of their big tentpole games kind of makes sense. It's a live service game that is doing very well and probably making them a lot of money. So this is, by the way, I'm about to list off all the things that they've done recently, and this is not even all of them. I went on their Wikipedia. I tried to find even more info on the studios, and there are more studios that are not even listed in this article that were shut down or were pulled with funding was pulled from them or something along those lines. So this is the list I have from VGC. They closed T-, FPC, Bad Brain. They split from Vancouver-based Worlds Untold, which was the studio from the former founder of the Mass Effect Studios creator in 2023, as well as Seattle-based Jar of Sparks, which was the studio founded in 2022 by Xbox veteran Jerry Hook. They also closed Uka Studio, I believe, which was the developers of Visions of Mana, which is funny. I remember that story pretty well because Visions of Mana, that studio was shut down, I think, before the game came out. Like, it was still going to come out, and then they closed it. Which that game didn't do very well, so I kind of get it. They also closed, or they didn't close, but they split with Goicha Studios, so Suda51's Grasshopper manufacturer and Resident Evil producers, Mr. Kobayashi's GP Track 50. So they split from them, and both of them have to publish their own games now because they no longer want anything to do with them. So if you kind of noticed, a lot of those are either studios you've never heard of because they never did anything. They were bought and then shut down. Or you heard probably big names like Mac Walters, who, the Mass Effect guy, or Xbox veteran Jerry Hook, or Suda51, or Resident Evil producer. Like, these are all big names that were probably producing very big games that probably would have done pretty well outside of Grasshopper, because I don't think any of those games are actually good. They're just very interesting, which is very different. Obviously, the Visions of Mana developer, I think probably you could have sniffed that coming. That game didn't do that well. I don't think it sold very well. It reviewed okay, but it didn't sell very well, I have to imagine. They've really been on a culling spree. They've really been on a bloodbath of killing studios. For such a big publisher, such a big company. And by the way, NetEase does other stuff. They have like music platforms that they own and e-commerce platforms in China. Like they are a pretty big company overall. And it really does seem like video games have just become an investment of, how are we going to make our money back? And there is not normally a very good answer to that question. And you look at something like a Grasshopper, and I'd say, you're not making a lot of money off of that. You're looking at something like a Vision of Mana. It's like, you're probably not going to make a lot of money off of that. I think they're looking at this as like, well, we need the big hitters, a Marvel Rivals, a Hoyoverse, a Genshin Impact kind of deal, and we're going to try to double down on that. And these single-player games like Gang of Dragon probably are not going to be the best investments for us. And when they heard, we still need another $44 million, they said, I think we're just going to cut our losses here. I'm in a weird place of like, this is just interesting from a point of like NetEase, who is the serial killer of studios as of late, and also an interesting point of, this publisher, Nagoshi, this developer, Nagoshi, who everybody was looking forward to this new Yakuza game, and you're not going to get it anymore very quickly after being announced, almost as fast as Highguard was announced and then canceled. This is happening. It's also very interesting. It's in flux. Like, they're trying to get the game another buyer, another investor. I think with $44 million, they're going to have a really good case. They're going to have a really good case. I don't care how deep in development this game is. You need a really good case. And so I'm interested to see where this game goes from here. I'm thinking it's just dead, unfortunately. But, I also was not really looking forward to it because I just think it was going to be another Yakuza game. It was just going to be another one of the mini Yakuza games that I've played and not very much else. And while those are cool, every once in a while, I am kind of burned out on them. So I wasn't really crazy about it. But hey, man, another Jeff Keighley game that was murdered in its crib. Unfortunate. Next, and finally, for the news this episode, we have Fortnite changing its V-Bucks structure to, quote, help pay the bills, because, another quote, the cost of running Fortnite has gone up a lot. Those are both direct quotes from Fortnite's blog, where they are really direct about why they're increasing V-Buck prices, which is just not normal, but also not normal because it's one of the most profitable and biggest games in the world. So you would not expect that it would be very difficult to make these or to make money, and they don't need to make much more money. But as a high level here, I'm not going to go through all of it in detail, but essentially, prices for all passes. So there's like multiple passes. It's not just a battle pass now. It's like a Fortnite pass and a music pass and an OG pass and a regular pass. And then you have like a Fortnite premium pass that has all of them. A crew, that's what it is. Fortnite crew. And all of those prices will be going up. You will get less V-Bucks. B-Bucks. That's rolls off the tongue easier. But V-Bucks per pack. So like an 800 V-Buck pack. It used to be 1,000. It's now 800 for the same amount of money. Battle passes will pay out less V-Bucks as rewards, and so on. So it used to be you can still, okay, so little caveat there. So the thing that I've always been told is if you have the battle pass in Fortnite, you can then earn V-Bucks by playing the battle pass enough to earn your V-Bucks back that you put into the battle pass. So you can essentially just buy the battle pass over and over again if you do that. You can still do that. So a battle pass will pay out less V-Bucks, but it will also cost less V-Bucks to buy. So it used to cost $1,000 or $1,000. Holy frick. Yeah, that's a highway robbery. 1,000 V-Bucks to get a battle pass for the season. But then you would earn 1,000 V-Bucks for playing the battle pass. In this case, you're paying 800 V-Bucks for the battle pass. You're getting 800 V-Bucks. But the caveat there, on top of the caveat, is you'd then be able to get like 500 extra V-Bucks as rewards for doing all of the battle pass. Those are completely removed. So anywhere that they could squeeze the pennies, they're trying. And this is just very funny. Again, this is just such a comical headline from one of the biggest games in the world, one of the most profitable, one of the most played video games ever made and currently, that they can't pay the bills. The bills are too high, and the cost of running Fortnite has gone up a lot. Well, what are they doing in Fortnite now that they haven't been doing? Well, let me tell you, friend, you may not remember. You may not be keeping up, but Epic also runs the Epic Store. Epic Store, very well known for being the only competitor, I guess, to Steam that nobody wants to use. I also think that's kind of a travesty. Like, we have a monopoly on Steam, or we have a monopoly with Steam, and then we have somebody come in that's like, I think somebody should try and compete with them and try to make, because competition is only good for us as gamers. It is only good as consumers. It's only good to a point where they just give out free games every week. They're not really any good, but like they are free. So they occasionally give out a good one. So like this is something that is what I would assume is a massive money drain. They're probably not making very many sales off of it that, is probably worth going into it. They claim that it is minimally profitable. Minimally. But they are trying to give out free games every week to a bunch of people. And that's, of course, a fee that people have to pay. Or they have to pay a fee to the developer to do that. They are trying to have exclusivity deals. So, like Alan Wake 2, you still cannot buy on Steam. You have to buy it on Epic Store on PC. Borderlands 4, also infamously an Epic exclusive for a limited amount of time. So these are all big payouts that they have to give to these publishers and developers in order to get these games exclusive for whatever amount of time on their platform. So they have the Epic Game Store, which is also burning money. And then they are also trying to make money off of their Fortnite Roblox creator programs, which I was actually not super familiar with. I just watched a video from Kyle Bosman. Highly recommend Kyle Bosman. He's super funny and also has some great takes. Personally, really enjoy his stuff. And they have a Roblox creator program now. I play Fortnite every once in a while. I'll hop on with a friend if they ever want to play. And I do think it's a genuinely fun game, Battle Royale. It's a genuinely fun game. Well polished, well made, constantly updated, always having new stuff to bring you back in. Really, really, really well maintained game that I understand why it continues to be successful. However, they also have a bunch of other bullcrap in there now that's like user created and is very reminiscent of something that you may remember as something like a Roblox. So they now have a creator program for that. You can make money off of being a creator, and if people spend enough time in your levels, you can get a payout. And they can use your game to spend V-Bucks in, and you can get a payout. So they are claiming that part of the reason that the bills are now higher to pay is that they have to pay these creators V-Bucks, or they have to pay out these creators for the V-Bucks that they're bringing into their game, which all of this is obviously nonsense. It's obviously nonsense because obviously Epic is getting that money. That money is going to Epic. And it was money that they weren't previously making. So it's just extra ways for them to make money. Yes, they have to pay out a percentage of that to the creators, but every other bit of that money goes directly to them. Or unless it's like a purchase that was made on like kind of we continue to mention like a PlayStation or a Fortnite or a Switch or something like that. Excuse me, not a Fortnite but a Switch. Then that platform also gets their cut. So really, there's a lot of people taking pieces of the pie, but Epic is still getting that money more often than not, right? They weren't getting that money previously. So it's more money that they're making. It is more avenues of revenue that they're making. If you want to say that they are just bleeding money from, the Epic Game Store, you could possibly make that argument. But they claim it's marginally profitable. So that's not the case. Now they're doing this Fortnite creator program, trying to catch up with Roblox. And this game is still one of the most played games of all time every single year, every single month, every single day. So, and oh my gosh, if you've ever tried to buy a skin off of freaking Roblox, it's like kind of crazy. It's like $30, like $25 to get like a pack. It's like, how much is it? It would be about $15 a skin. Something like that. The economy of those skins is insanity. It's insanity. And I don't know how they freaking do it. I don't know how they get away with it, but they do. I'm still waiting for my Kim Kardashian skin. Maybe one day I'll be able to play as Kim Kardashian. I know that they have it. I just never bought it because I don't have the V-Bucks to do it anymore. But or ever. I do now have V-Bucks because I am a Game Pass subscriber and therefore I get V-Bucks as part of Fortnite Crew every month, which is nice, but I have not bought a skin yet and I didn't feel the need to buy Kim Kardashian in her skin tight black leather suit or whatever. So anyway, there's a lot of good skins on Fortnite. But the point is that they're making a lot of money. So it's just weird for them to be this upfront about like, yeah, we really need more money. When they're clearly just making a lot. It's obviously like we need to make more money. The shareholders are wanting us to make more money, and therefore we are going to try and upcharge you more. It's just really unfortunate. It's just so sad to see from a publisher this big, So I don't know. There was a lot less to say on that than I assumed there would be. I thought I was going to go off on a real rant on that, but really, that's all there is to say. Is like it's a weird greed move, and it was clearly the PR behind it was a little silly. It's just not just weird. They needed to really kind of be a more obtuse with that, I think, is what it comes down to. But that's it for that, I think. Last but not least, obviously, we have our impressions segment of the show, going over what games I've been playing. Obviously, try to go in as much detail as humanly possible, because I'm just weird like that, I guess. So, Resident Evil Requiem. Obviously, the big flavor of the month. Obviously, kind of being overshadowed now. You heard of Pocapia? Haven't played that, by the way, so don't get your hopes up. Don't intend to play it either. I am not a cozy gamer, and you can't convince me, no matter how good the ratings are, that just because it has Pokemon in it, it's better than Dragon Quest Builders 2, and I didn't care about Dragon Quest Builders 2. So I'm avoiding that at the moment. But I did try out what was it? Not Marathon. Oh, the Finals. That's right. A couple of friends of mine wanted to play the Finals. Played the Finals. Played some Apex Legends with a friend. He had the flu. He's recovering from his surgery. So played with him for a little bit, and just to kind of keep him occupied. And then obviously finished up Resident Evil Requiem. So very few impressions overall because I was spending time doing other things. But Resident Evil Requiem. Where to begin? So, spoke about it on the last episode, and I was about halfway. No, I was more than halfway through it. I was about 66% of the way through. I was about 2/3. So, I had already kind of had some exposure to Leon. I've gotten about halfway through Leon's campaign, and I was really enjoying myself. And I will say that I completely did continue to enjoy myself. Resident Evil Requiem, Resident Evil 9 is easily a great game. Like there is no arguing about it. And I think that it is clearly nothing that somebody is arguing about. It seems to be the reception of this game is incredibly positive, overwhelmingly so. A 90 on Metacritic. This is one of the best Resident Evil games review-wise ever. It was at one point the highest reviewed game on Metacritic of all time, beating out Cory in the House, which is just a meme game. Like it's not even a real game like that people are trying to review and say is good. So like it beat out a meme game for being the best user reviewed game on Metacritic of all time. This is unprecedented amounts of praise for the series, considering that Resident Evil 7 was an 86, not a 90, and Resident Evil 8 was an 84 on Metacritic. Like clearly people are happy to review this game either good or okay. You know, it's nobody was I was honestly thinking this game would not breach 87. Like an 88 was the highest I thought this game could go. And I thought that was incredibly optimistic because 84 for the previous mainline Resident Evil game, that just seems like what did that game do wrong considering I think Resident Evil 8 is really good, and I actually don't know very many people who don't like Resident Evil 8. So it's weird to see that game reviewed so poorly and then this game reviewed so highly. And I think that's really where the conversation on Resident Evil comes to for me is I really enjoyed this game from beginning to end. It is not perfect though. It's not perfect. This is a game that, as I kind of mentioned in my previous conversation about it, is split into two halves. There's the Grace half, which is the first part of the game, and the Leon half, which is the second half of the game. And there is a small bit of overlap that you kind of pop back in between the characters at different segments, but they are very small. And it is really, this is the Grace game, and this is the Leon game. And that's kind of how it is. And then they smash those two together. It does not culminate in anything particularly crazy. Like it's just another Resident Evil ending, and it isn't anything great. They do try to build up like a more overarching narrative, I would say. It was very obvious that Resident Evil didn't have a very long tail in terms of its universe. Like you obviously have Umbrella, and that's like kind of the big bad of everything, and then there's just like always somebody who's trying to start the virus again, and it's like I guess that you can continue to do that forever if you really wanted to, but that's not really a good thing to keep players hooked for the overarching narrative for the series. So after you beat the game, you unlock a report that basically goes through and makes a bunch of stuff. They attempt to basically retcon a bunch of the series lore into making like an actual big bad that there has always been and we just didn't know about it kind of deal. It's very Kingdom Hearts 1 to Kingdom Hearts 2-ish, you know? Like if you didn't know, like if you play Kingdom Hearts 1, which I mean, if you don't get into the freaking lore of Kingdom Hearts, but like, you know, and I'm not trying to say that Resident Evil has lore in comparison to Kingdom Hearts, but that's what Kingdom Hearts 2 did, was it was like, oh, well, we kind of need a more grand universe, and we really didn't think too far ahead about it. So like, yeah, just retcon half of what we said in the first game, and just kind of like, we didn't tell you half of what was really happening behind the scenes because that just wasn't relevant to the story at the time, but like this is what was really happening, and that's why these guys are the real bad guys. And it's like, okay, you know, that's kind of what they do in Resident Evil 9, and that's to try and gear the series up for being like well, there's a lot more going on here, and we're going to have to get to the bottom of it. Leon and Chris Redfield are going to have to work together to figure out what's going on here, you know, kind of deal. But anyway, point is, this game has two different halves. And it has an ending. It didn't blow me away. It was fun, from beginning to end. I think the Leon segments are fine. They are interesting. They are fun. I was hoping that, and it kind of seemed like when I put the game down last, it almost seemed like the game wanted to try to open up a little bit. Resident Evil 4 Remake did that a little bit. They had some areas that were, a little bit more explorable, had some optional areas you could go and find some stuff. Kind of like on the lake is the main area that I'm remembering from Resident Evil 4 that they expanded in the remake. And then Resident Evil 9, it seemed like there were areas within Leon's campaign that you could go and you could go wherever you wanted. And it was, oh, this is open. And it really isn't. There are a couple of optional areas, but they're very small. They're not very interesting. They're not really there's not great rewards for doing them either. I mean, there are, but there's not it's not game changing stuff. It's really like this is an open area, but you have to go to every area eventually. Like there is a segment of this area that you have to do, and it will be the same for every player. And that's just how this game is structured. And it's like, okay, well, that's not as open as I really wanted it to be. The combat is still good. It didn't seem like, though, it ever reached the series heights in terms of Leon's campaigns. Like Resident Evil 4, it just seemed like levels are more deliberately designed there. There's a lot more going on with the set pieces and the moments that you're kind of interacting with in those segments. So I never felt like Leon segments were the best the series had, but they were always fun. They were always fun, and I always enjoyed myself playing them. I think the loop they have here, the polish and the design, is all top tier, and it's all a fun popcorn movie kind of thing. And I think that this game having two distinct halves that are completely separated from each other really hurt it in the long run, because it doesn't feel like you are building to anything in this game, at least mechanically, game-wise. Grace, the first half of the game, you're building up all these, upgrades, you're upgrading your health, you're upgrading your shooting capacity, you're building up an arsenal of ammo and weapons and resources to try and take on enemies. And I assumed that I was going to be put back in the shoes of Grace, maybe in another segment towards the end of the game, and I would need all of that stuff. Or I would still have, not need, but I would have all that stuff. And I would be able to build on that arsenal and build on those skills and build on those upgrades that I had been accruing throughout my time as Grace. And that never really happens. You do go back and play a segment as Grace towards the end of the game, but you don't carry over most of what you had in your inventory, and you're pretty much just put back in square one. And I felt like, and you can't further upgrade anything either. So it's like, okay, well, it really feels like this game is pretty disjointed, and Leon feels the exact same. You feel like you are playing a really condensed Leon campaign. Instead of playing an 8 to 10 hour Leon campaign, you're playing a 4-hour one. And that means you're getting upgrades and getting new weapons and stuff like that for 4 hours. And it feels much more truncated, and it feels a much more faster pace, certainly, but it feels like you're never really building anything crazy, because how fast can you really amp up the stakes in a 4-hour campaign where you're trying to upgrade all these things and grind for currency to upgrade and get new stuff and introduce new mechanics and stuff like that? And the answer is you're just not going to. And I know this sounds really bad. It makes it sound like, oh, well, this game isn't fun. It must not be fun. That's not true at all. I truly enjoyed every minute I spent with this game. I think Grace's horror segments are incredibly scary. Some of the scariest that you've seen in the entire series. And it's expanded upon in a way that doesn't feel gimmicky. Like, there is a very, very scary moment or segment of Resident Evil 8. And I was like, oh, frig, this is very reminiscent of that. But in that segment, it's a very different segment of the game. Like, you're not really playing the game in the same way as you are with Grace, where you have upgrades and stuff like that kind of tie into that, you're kind of put back at square one to make things a lot more scary and make things, you're not as powerful in that moment because of that. And with Grace, you always feel like you're powerless and you're going up against odds that are stacked against you. And you can't fight this. You need to run away right now. Like, you don't have the resources and you need to try to get more resources from somewhere else. And I loved that loop. I thought it was really well done. Thought the game was intensely scary. Same thing with Leon, except for on the other end, it was action-packed. I felt like a bad anus. I loved going through segments with Leon and being like, yo, I feel so powerful, especially after I just felt like a worthless person as Grace, like a little worm. And Grace, by the way, I hear some people pushing back on her. I kind of agree with the pushback. She's a coward. And it's not even like that she's that scared or that shy or whatever. It's that all the time when I'm playing the freaking game, she's like breathing heavily and like panting and like, oh no, and like nothing's even happening. Nothing's even going on. I'm just like looting a drawer or something. She's, oh my god, oh, I'm just like, okay, like chill out. Like, I know we're in Scary Town. This is Halloween Town for sure. But like, we need to chill. You're gonna be okay. Like, kind of deal. Like, just at least be quiet. Like, at the very minimum, can we be quiet? Just kind of annoying. I understand that Grace was meant to be like, you're playing as a really weak and powerless person, and that's supposed to increase the amount of fear that you have playing through this game. Anyway, point is, Resident Evil 9 is a great game. Is it a 90 on Metacritic? Absolutely not. There are issues with it. I wish this game had been twice as long. I wish, honestly, almost like a Pokemon situation. The one time I will ever defend this practice by Pokemon. You should have released this game in 2 halves. You should have made these each half twice as long, and you should have released this game in 2 halves. Give me a Grace game and give me a Leon game, and I think both would have been phenomenal, and I think both would have been better overall products as a result, because you're going to be getting, a great horror game like you probably were looking for in like a Resident Evil 7, and I think that's what this game, or this half of the game, was definitely trying to emulate, was like a Resident Evil 7. And you're going to get a really great action game like a Resident Evil 8 or a Resident Evil 4 that, obviously that's what that half of the game was obviously trying to emulate. And again, it just feels like this game didn't need to be 2 separate halves, and the game suffers a little bit for being 2 separate halves, but the both halves are so good in and of themselves, it's really hard for me to complain about it, right? Like, I understand that, like, if I'm eating a really good burger and you cut it in half and give me another really good burger, another half of a really good burger, it's like, okay, well, I like both of these halves and you're still giving me a burger. So like, I'm not really complaining, but like, I probably, if I ordered a freaking cheeseburger and then you gave me a freaking, I don't know, another burger that has different toppings on it, I'd be like, well, I ordered the cheeseburger. I really kind of bought this expecting to get a cheeseburger, and while I like the other half of this burger, I feel like we really could have just, I really kind of just wanted the other burger, the whole thing. That would have been more satiating to me. It would have been a better overall experience if I just had a full burger that I wanted. I don't know if that was the best metaphor, but it was the one that I came up with off the top of my head. So it is interesting to see this game get this good of a reception. I think it's kind of blowing my mind. The game has sold incredibly well. The game has reviewed incredibly well. And people are flocking to it. And I think that's great because it's a great game. But I think it definitely has a feeling of like a game that went through a really rushed development process. They did not know what they were doing. They threw stuff at a wall because like, oh, dude, are we making a horror game or are we making a freaking action game? It's like, I don't know what to do anymore with this series. Just do both. just do both, and just they threw it all out there, and it worked. And I think in another world, this could have easily freaking been a miserable game. It could have been another Resident Evil 6. It gives that vibe, right? Like, that is something Resident Evil 6 did. Is it had a bunch of different campaigns that were all very different, and they did not mesh together well. And I never played Resident Evil 6 more than like 15 minutes, but from what I understand, that game like had a lot more problems than that. But like that is an issue that Resident Evil 6 had, and this is an issue. That's the exact same thing that's happening here. But clearly, they've refined it enough, and they've done enough to it to make it a great experience overall. So I cannot complain, but I still think that this game could be better. I still think that it's a weird that it's getting such positive reception. And I think I think I'm hearing that a little bit too. A lot of people I'm hearing talking about this game are like, look, I love the game, but like, wow, a 90 on Metacritic? Okay, like Resident Evil doesn't normally score that well. And like, okay, it sold how many millions of copies within the first week? Like, okay, like that's great, but Resident Evil just doesn't normally sell that well. Like, what did this game do to really pull people in that I wasn't aware it was doing previously? Like that's odd. And Resident Evil clearly is a series that has a mass market appeal. It's even got obviously a movie franchise based on it, for frick's sake. Like not like it has that much to do with the original Resident Evil, really. But it does exist, and like it's an annualized franchise at this point, not annualized, but like it comes out pretty regularly and is a kind of mainstay and very well respected series. So I mean, it's clearly got the sauce, people clearly like it, but it's just surprising. It's just surprising, right? Overall, I still love this game. I'd give it like what would I give it? If I had to rate it out of 100, I would give it an 86. I think I'd give it an 86. I do truly enjoy every minute of it, but I do also wish that I had gotten more of the stuff that worked, that I had had an experience that built to more of a finality of like what these mechanics are and what the story is and what these characters are. I never felt like I got that with this game. Again, didn't feel like I needed it. It's a zombie game, and it's very campy. So it's not like I'm really looking for a great story and characters and all that, but it is something I feel like could have been even better than it is. And maybe my thoughts on this game will change over time. I think I'm obviously coming off a lot hotter than most people are about this game. But again, I have to continue to emphasize I loved it. So I would highly recommend it. I would say go out and pick it up. I will continue to say, though, the Grace segments are really scary. If you are not a horror gamer, you may honestly be turned away by them. They are legit. Like, my hands were sweating most of the time I was playing that game as Grace. It is pretty freaking freaky. But the Leon segments are great. Love them to death. I wish, again, I had a game that expanded upon that more, and I got to sink into that experience more and had more of a definitive experience with better design levels and set pieces and so on, and even more of them with Leon. There's also a large emphasis on nostalgia bait in this game. I mean, we all know, and I even reported on it here because there was a trailer that literally showed that, but you go back to the police department in Raccoon City. This is not the only thing they do to try to pull from nostalgia. There are a lot of things in Leon's campaign that are very nostalgic references, very big pulls. And look, I get it. Like, it freaking works. Like, clearly people love Leon. They have a nostalgic connection to Leon. They think he's cool. And just because he was in Resident Evil 6 too, doesn't mean that he sucks. Like, it means that they clearly have forgotten the bad things about Leon and lean into the good things, which, hey, great for them. But like, there is a real nostalgic push for this game, and I think nostalgia is also a really dangerous thing when it comes to objectivity. I think people see nostalgia and they're like, yep, I love this now. Like, that's all I needed. And I get it. I do that too. But as somebody who really only played Resident Evil 2 and a lot of the Resident Evil games recently when they were remade, I don't have a huge nostalgic connection to the series. So, and I only played Resident Evil 4 a few years before the remake even came out. No, I played it in like college. So I played it like 10 years ago, something like that. But like, overall, I just don't have a huge nostalgic connection to it. So it's just interesting to see all these people pushing it. And I think there's a lot of things going for this game that make them do that, but I also think there's problems with it. So it's just, again, very surprising. Very surprising. Overall, though, still a great game. Still love it. It will still easily be in my top 5 this year. Guaranteed. Like, I genuinely can't see a world where it's not. So look forward to that. Spoiler alert, in 9 months. So see you then. But anyway, think that'll wrap it up though. That's a pretty decent episode, right? 1 hour 45, something along those lines. That's kind of where I want to hit, an hour and a half to hour 45. So we're good. We're good. We had an episode. We did it. We talked. We bonded a little bit. We got to know each other. Parasocially in some way, shape, or form, I guess. So thank you, friend. Can I call you friend? Will you be my neighbor? For sticking around until the very end. It truly does mean a lot. I say it every episode because I mean it every episode. Really, really, really mean it. I appreciate you being here for me. I appreciate you being a friend. I appreciate you listening into my ramblings. I hope I helped you get through the workday or a nice commute or something, whatever this podcast is meant for in your life. I truly hope you enjoyed it. And hey, maybe one day we can kiss. And I will see you then, friend. I will leave you with this. Play a good video game, have a good day, and I love you. Bye-bye.